It makes me wonder if anybody in charge or involved in passing that bill spoke to a dentist, because this is a movie that we've seen play out so many times. Right, they're in pain, they go to the dentist, and they find out, oh, a root canal costs say $1,500, a crown costs another $1,500. It's no longer covered. So
Right.
the only other option is extraction, and obviously a ton of people have dental phobia. Even if you didn't, I can't blame you for not wanting a tooth extracted when the dentist is telling you there are other options possible. So these patients end up doing nothing. And then the infection gets worse and spreads in their jaw. And what happens? They wind up in the ER, right? With a potentially life-threatening medical emergency from a dental infection. And so it's like a facepalm moment. Like, of course this was going to increase your costs long term.
This is the Open Wide Podcast with your hosts, Scott Drucker and Janesh Patel.
All right, and welcome back to another episode of the Open Wide Podcast. Janesh, how's it going?
Good, Scott. I told you about my long day this morning, but, can't complain at the end of it. We got through it all.
You got through it. So this is our first episode in 5 episodes, maybe, without a guest. So the two of us will dig into a little bit of news and keep the mix of formatting spiced up a little bit.
I like that.
All right. So we've got a few articles we'll touch on. Do you want to take us from the top? I think you had one about Pennsylvania law passing.
Yeah, no, that's great. To me, Scott, it's all about just things that we're seeing in the industry and the things that we're going to cover today. Obviously, we talked to Amy about how the DTA is lobbying on behalf of the dental industry. Even though they're on the trade side, they want to support the dentist and the industry at large, right? And this article kind of hits squarely on one of the items that we talked about on the Hill, which is the need to increase coverage in the dental market. Because if you don't, and people don't do their routine checkups or get the best care on the oral health side, it can lead to more expensive care in the medical side. And you might know this. I mean, you went through dental school and you've probably seen this world play out in front of you. But this one article, it came out September 14th, 2024. It's just a couple days ago. And it's basically about the Pennsylvania laws that rolled back a lot of dental coverage in 2011. And they were treating as a cost-saving measure, to save on things like, root canals and some of the more, I'd say, crowns and root canals are what they called out specifically in the article. But just whatever it was, they were trying to save on cost by rolling back some coverage. And they estimated, get this, that they would save a total of $18.9 million. So over the course of this rollback. After now, what is it, Scott? Since 2011, how many years is that till today?
13 years-ish, right?
13 years, right? They are saying we need to reverse course because of how much extra medical expense they've gotten, because now tooth extraction is the cheapest way based on what's available to take care of some of these problems, or they go to the ER and they get more expensive coverage and care. And that, from a planned 18.9 million savings over that period of time, actually racked up $35 million in cost, according to the article.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if anybody who is sort of in charge or involved in passing that bill spoke to a dentist. Because this is a movie that we've seen play out so many times. Is a patient will have a deep cavity, turns into whatever, a need for a root canal, and then infection in the bone, and they're in pain, right? They're in pain. They go to the dentist and they find out, oh, a root canal costs whatever it costs, say $1,500. A crown costs another $1,500, and they're like, well, I can't afford that, and it's no longer covered. So right. The only other option is extraction, and obviously a ton of people have dental phobia. Even if you didn't, I can't blame you for not wanting a tooth extracted when the dentist is telling you there are other options possible. So these patients end up doing nothing. And then the infection gets worse and spreads in their jaw. And what happens? They wind up in the ER, right? With a potentially life-threatening medical emergency from a dental infection blowing up and blocking their ability to breathe or going up to their brain or what have you. And so it's like a facepalm moment. Like, of course, this was going to increase your costs long term. And of course, it's not going to, it's going to make a lot of people unhappy removing all of that coverage. So this, they set themselves up for a layup of a lose-lose situation.
Well,
that's my.
Yeah, so I wanted to clarify one thing. I realized I said that those dollar amounts were for the time period, the 13 years. That's annually per that time period. So it's meaning that's the cost savings that it was going to be each year. But the average estimated cost of what was added to the medical side was 35 million annually too. So that's compounded. It's not just like a $20 million delta over the course of that time. It's each year for that law going into place. So it's a pretty costly mistake.
Yeah, when you were telling me this, I was like, that they are literally saving pennies and spending dollars down the road. And there's a quote in this article from, who is it, the Senate Majority Leader Jay Costa from Allegheny, who says, "We're being penny wise and dollar stupid." Yes, that's exactly sums it up perfectly. But they swung, they missed, they found out, and now they're course correcting. So yay for all of those dentists in Pennsylvania who take this government coverage. So
and then
do more for your patients.
Remember we're talking about like what sometimes like the ADA and the DTA both do in like behalf of like the industry. So in this article, it even points out that they use an ADA study to kind of understand like what the cost of medical procedures that are born out of just non-addressed dental or oral health procedures. And so they utilize that backbone of a study to talk about what these excess costs are now because they just don't have these root canals or these procedures that should have been covered.
Yeah.
So kudos to them for putting together the data behind it more than anything else.
Yeah. Shout out, Marco. Come on the pod.
Yeah. This is another plug for Marco.
Right. That's right. All right. I'm going to move on to our next piece here. It sort of bridges nicely from the last one. Also involves laws passed in Pennsylvania and this one in Illinois as well. We'll stick with Pennsylvania for the moment. They passed legislation recently that prohibits dental insurers from adopting a policy of paying participating dentists using virtual credit cards. So I didn't realize, I'm personally out of network doing this surgical specialty stuff. Even if a general dentist that I work with is in network, I'm personally out of it. So until this piece, I didn't actually know that there are insurers that pay out with virtual credit cards. But the first thing that comes to mind is, who's paying the transaction fee on this, right?
Not the insurer, apparently.
Right. So they're either kicking that over to the dentist, or the dentist is passing that along to the patient. And there are a number of dentists that are doing that now. Say, hey, you're the payment processing will just sort of roll onto the overall cost of treatment. So yeah, I didn't realize this was a thing, but good on the state of Pennsylvania for calling it out effectively.
Yeah, once you sent me this article, Scott, I did some background research on, it's called House Bill 1664 for those that want to research it. But it's one of those where they're just saying they're trying to fight back against these unfair reimbursement policies at the end of the day. And they go into things like you just said, who's bearing the transaction costs, like that extra 3%, and in some cases 5%. Like if you don't have a standard processor, but we know some rates can go that high, it's either the patient or the dentist. Just the increase to the cost of overall healthcare is now being just manufactured by the insurance providers. Like it's completely avoidable extra cost on both parties. And then they talk about how, as weird as it sounds, we're in 2024, there are dentists that actually don't have, call it virtual payment processing style capabilities. And so they have to go invest in the infrastructure and get all that. So it's an extra cost that dentist might not have expected. Now, personally, maybe that's a good thing to move them a little bit into the future, but at the same time, like it should be a little bit on their terms and not just foisted upon them just to get this reimbursement they're rightly entitled to at the end of the day.
Yeah, agreed. Any business should take electronic payment today, but while we're on the theme of kind of bashing these insurance companies at the moment, the second half of this article calls out an Illinois law or bill that was just passed. Let me see. I don't want to botch this. Okay. So Illinois passed House Bill 4789, which ensures companies stick to their prior authorizations. So let me translate that for you. before the dentist does the procedure, when they're in network with an insurance, they submit a prior authorization. So they say to the insurance company, hey, we need to do this procedure for this patient, and we want to confirm that it's approved and you're going to cover and pay out based on the fee schedule that's been established. Apparently, there are games being played, and some insurance companies are then not paying out the providers after the pre-authorization was already confirmed with the provider. So the insurance company confirmed, yes, this is covered. We're going to cover whatever amount according to the fee schedule for this procedure for this patient. And then they don't end up paying after the procedure is actually completed. So I don't even know how to frame this lightly, like more favorably to the insurance companies, but Illinois has had it, apparently.
That's your backyard, Scott. You got to keep them in line a little bit.
And they have to stop playing these games. Yeah, I don't know. That's the
in your mind, this is where I don't know a lot about how that practice actually operates. So let's say this happens. Then is it cost immediately like, oh my gosh, I thought the insurance had this and they went through with the procedure, and like, are they now trying to chase down those dollars from the patients, or are they trying to see how they continue to battle the insurance provider or eat that cost? I imagine they need to recoup it. Don't get me wrong, but I'm trying to figure out what is that process.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, of course, you're going to want to chase down the money owed to you by the insurer that they've already pre-approved. And so any dentist who's in network with any insurance company has, I'm sure, spent time hitting their head against a wall trying to get the right coverage. And anecdotally, I'll say, some will say like, yeah, they'll roll their eyes. Oh, it was rejected. Obviously, we have to submit it 2 more times to this insurer before we know they're going to finally cover it. Or, they denied it because of this language or this word wasn't in the submission or this or that. At least if there's a denial, there's a denial first. But this sounds like there was an approval, and then the dentist is just chasing the money owed to them. And this is revenue cycle management, right? This is
such a big problem. Like the fact that, like you're saying, these industries, especially the insurance industry, they play these games, like they're artificially inflating costs. They're making it to where they're covering things and not covering things. And then that adds overhead to the dental practice to chase down those insurance like claims. Like you said, submit it multiple times. Why?
Yep.
It's manufacturing overhead and extra costs that, guess who gets to pay that? The patient. Because these, just like us and your company and every other company, it's the customers or the clients that pay the bills to keep us afloat.
Always.
And so the only way to cover that overhead is charge more. Like, unfortunately, it's kind of a crazy game that's getting played.
Yeah, I would love to bring on a dentist that it doesn't have to be a dentist, but just somebody from the payer side, from the insurance company side, to talk about some of these things. Because from sitting on the practitioner side of the fence, it's like, the payer side has this like nefarious aura to it, I'll say. So I would love to have an open and honest conversation and maybe learn myself about maybe giving more credit to the payers, but it doesn't seem like best practice manifests itself.
We're only we're only on one side of this argument right now, so there could be another side we're completely missing. But at the same time, the other thing that's interesting, just on the term of insurance, we were talking about looking through news articles to discuss, and how there's so many articles that were just about, on the other side, just insurance fraud, people claiming procedures that they didn't do or whatever, like, and there's just been like a lot of these news feeds that just say, settlement reached here, lawsuit done here, or whatever it might be, or doctor forced to pay back X amount of dollars, from fraudulent claim billings. And so I do see that there are things on the other side, but when you pre-authorize something and then you don't pay it out, like that seems like a pretty blatant like game versus the other guys who are really just kind of committing.
Yeah. On the Medicaid fraud front, I've seen a number of those articles recently, and it's frustrating. I mean, there are roughly 210,000 dentists in the country. There are going to be some bad apples, right? It's just large numbers. But my expert advice would be, number one, don't claim to do something that you didn't do. Mind blowing, right?
Yeah.
And number two, if you're bold / dumb enough to do that, don't do it to the government. That will put you in jail.
Yeah. The one group actually going to hold you accountable.
Oh my God. Yeah. If you do it to anybody private, you're asking for a lawsuit. If you do it to the government, you're asking for jail time, basically.
Well, Scott, do you think that this is also why I feel like, again, I'm new to dentistry, and I keep saying that. So at some point, I'm not new to dentistry, but I'm going to keep claiming that for a little while. Is I see all these like plans, right? Like these dental plans that are being sold to dental offices, or these DSOs, where they are kind of like their own insurance at some level, right? You create your plan, member plan, patients subscribe to it. You get these teeth cleanings, you get these teeth whitenings, and some basic procedures, I think, that are included in it. But I guess that eliminates this whole like back and forth and games being played with the insurance provider, and then also the fraud on the other side that can potentially be had. Like, is that why those were born, or is it just really because it was better for the patients at the end of the day in terms of ease of access and use? Like, what's your read on that?
Maybe a little bit of both. I think it's a better experience. Everybody is used to subscription fees or costs now, right? With many things in your life. I think it basically is a form of insurance, right? I would love to bring on somebody who works at or has founded one of those membership companies and take a deep dive. I was talking to one of them recently. I think this was at the Dykema conference, and learned that apparently in some states you can't just set up your own subscription fee, and this is a state-by-state thing based on the individual state laws. You, as a healthcare provider, some don't allow you to just set up a membership plan where, say, you pay whatever, $100 or $200 or some subscription fee a month to cover all or most treatment, because it steps into the territory of insurance, and there's nuance there. And according to this individual I was talking to, and I'd love to bring her on the show, so won't name names yet, but according to this individual, there are many practices that have these plans and don't realize that they're technically that they and have to work through a third party. That's my understanding. We're going to fact check. We're going to bring on an expert. But yes, you're correct in your assessment that very quickly bleeds into the territory of that's basically an insurance. Right.
Yeah. So that's crazy to me that some states would restrict it, because it's like, one, it's kind of like you're protecting the insurance companies when they're like, the only reason to not do an insurance plan or to not go in network is it doesn't benefit you as the provider, right? At the end of the day, and potentially it doesn't benefit somebody as a patient, or else there'd be a lot of demand to help people kind of say, look, that's access to X amount of patients that we can bring into our office. So the plan is like, I don't want to get these games played against me. I want to create more of a free market to potentially help out with everybody. Like, I don't know. That's tough. If the real reasoning is like protecting an insurance provider, I don't know who's.
So I just looked it up here. Some states do restrict it because there's specific registration or licensing that you need to be an insurance company. And some states do deem these policies as insurance policies.
Understood. So like, it's more like
the office just may not have the right licensing and not realize it is kind of the.
It's like red tape. They're saying by the letter of the law, like we only allow insurance companies to operate as insurance companies. So either become one or don't do this anymore.
Then there's another note here. A few states may restrict the ability to collect upfront payments for services that have not yet been provided. I wasn't aware of that. And then there are, third reason kind of blends into the first, compliance with insurance regulations. So now if all of a sudden your membership plan makes you an insurer, now you're stepping into a whole world of regulations that you may not be aware of.
That's fair.
Not just having the license to be an insurer, but there may be a whole bunch of other things that technically your business should comply with that maybe,
That is a fair thing. If there's a lot more regulations, red tape, strict rules to become an insurance provider, that if you're going to compete against one, you might need to be able to follow the same stuff at the same time.
Yep.
Wait, so did you say you can't do prepaid services? Like, is that healthcare services specifically or just in general? Yeah, because what I'm thinking is like, there's a lot of companies that operate with prepaid services, like even SaaS companies. You pay at the beginning of the month to get the benefit towards the end of it.
I'd have to dig more into it. We can splice it out or whatever.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's more towards like healthcare services, like as a specific, like prepaying for healthcare services does seem a little weird versus
Yeah,
like,
I think that very much trips wires. I don't know about all businesses in general, um, but it's logical to me in the healthcare space.
yeah, no, I get that. Well, I think, look, that's either way, insurance is kind of crazy. I'd love to bring, like you said, somebody from the plan side on just to kind of get their perspective, and probably somebody from the insurance side on just to get their perspective on what's going on. Because
Yep.
looks like something's afoot. And if you're in that RCM and insurance space, there's a lot of bubbling activity that's happening in the bills and the laws and legislations.
Seriously, I think about it. It's an entire cohort of companies in the space that are built to track down the money owed to you for the services rendered. Yeah, I mean,
that's
figure. So I wanna pivot a little bit, unless you had any other last thoughts on this,
no.
to size of the dental market in general, and then I want to take a little bit of a dive into performance of a couple of the large publicly traded companies in the dental space, just as kind of a proxy for. It may not be the best proxy for growth of dental service, but for dental supplies, it will be a decent proxy. So there was an article you sent me here that it's a report put out by this group, SkyQuest Technology Consulting. Let's hope they used more than ChatGPT for their report. They talk about how the size of the dental market, dental services market, is currently valued at just under 39 billion, or was in 2023, and they expect that to grow to about 64 billion by 2031. And they cite some of the reasons for that growth, or drivers: increasing awareness about oral health and hygiene, a growing opportunity or popularity of aesthetic dentistry, rising popularity of invisible orthodontics, so the clear aligners, etc., etc. I'm curious, Janesh, if you have any thoughts out of the gate, first on just the growth that they're projecting here.
Well, I think it doesn't feel out of reality, right? Like knowing what we know now, it's 7.9% year over year is kind of the CAGR growth, right? So it's not like super astronomical, but it's not small either. It's not like in the 6%. It's in like the kind of high sevens essentially. And at the end of the day, what we've learned, even just through being in this industry, is not everyone utilizes their dental care. Even if they have insurance and they are covered, they're not utilizing it. And we talk about how we're now improving access. Like think about all the other things that we've been talking about on our show, which is dentists in more rural areas, increasing access, via better plans. We just talked about, basically more just knowledge, and even TikTok trends, whether good or bad, like they're just exposing the oral health kind of side of things. And I think the younger generations are hopefully doing a better job. And at least as access grows, that means more is getting spent in dentistry. And so it's not even talking about, you don't have to get to that number by spending more per head. You can get to that number by just getting more heads to spend. And I think that's where we are at this moment, is just better education, because we're less than 50% on that have insurance that actually use the insurance. So imagine just getting that to 60%. Like that just immediately balloons some of this industry. So I think that's my initial reaction, is it doesn't feel out of realm. And I do think that there's already movement happening to expand the access and expand the number of people that will just engage in their insurance.
Yep. I think it looks like, hopefully, there's this trend of more and more government coverage. Education's increasing. And I think technology is on a tear, right? That'll continue to evolve, and I think that will help tremendously in terms of accessing more people, even just from a physical geographic perspective. There's definitive but limited amount that you can do via tele, right? You can see. Yeah. Right. You can have a conversation with somebody, maybe sort of understand what's going on, but to actually deliver the treatment, you have to be physically there. I think that what we keep talking about with the compact, this dental compact, and a bunch of states making their licenses effectively interoperable, I think that's going to help tremendously. So yeah, I agree with you that I think this is not an unrealistic projection.
And then maybe the other thought here is, like, at the end of the day, do we see that this trend is also built like on inflation, or is it just traditionally like just increase in the number of people spending? And I know we went through an inflationary period with like the cost of supplies and the cost of labor and the cost of everything going up for the offices, which, creates more spend just organically. But my initial thought is, at least now with inflation more under control than where it was, like these projections, since they just came out, I think like last week or the other day, they don't have that built into the assumption. And that's where I think, again, it seems like a conservative or at least more fair number than over aggressively stating how big this market's going to get.
Yeah, I actually think it could be an understatement here. Looking at the number, 64 billion. I don't know. I could see it hitting 70. I'm literally just pulling this out of my butt.
Yeah, and this is the U.S.
But yeah, I feel like if it is that whatever 7% CAGR, like I think it has the potential to be higher. So no, it doesn't phase me. I suppose there were a couple of quarterly reports we were taking a look at, and there are only a handful of publicly traded companies in the dental space in general, and so we can glean some information because obviously they have their whatever duty to report on a whole host of things that private companies don't have to. So I could probably count them on one hand. You've got Shine, Patterson, Align,
Dentsply Sirona,
Dentsply, and then there's Solventum, which is the 3M spinoff. If I'm missing any, it's maybe one or two, but yeah, I mean, we have sort of that very limited read on what's actually happening behind the scenes at across companies in the dental space.
Invista, that was the other one I was thinking in my head.
Invista, that's right. Yeah, then that was the Danaher spinoff several years ago. So maybe 6 companies, and it looked like from the quarterly reports you sent or that we just looked at, that both Shine and Patterson are down in their what was it, internal revenue? What was the exact terminology? Internal growth.
They were either flat or slightly like growing in their general growth sales, but their internal sales, which is more a number based on how you grow organically through reinvesting in your own sales versus just spending to spend through outside funding. Those were slightly down, and that's where we were like, this is interesting. And I think what we were talking about, Scott, is obviously these things hit the newswire and everyone talks about it. So this isn't picking on one company or another, but just 2 weeks ago, Patterson came out and it was like a 13% drop in their stock or something same day because of this report. And I can think that kind of shocked me because, like, obviously I see Patterson as like one of these like big players that's here to stay for a long time, forever, kind of thing. And seeing how, much this industry, uses them and utilizes them, for them to have like a report like that just kind of shocked me. And then we see these 2 weeks later, this kind of thing saying this industry is going to grow 60% in 8 years. It was just kind of one of those things where it's projecting a growth in the industry, but yet these big publicly traded corporations look flat. And to us, we both said this essentially was, that means that there's market for a lot of other people to come in. Like, you can go, and then I'll kind of go through my little tangent.
Yeah, totally. It's just, it's interesting. I don't, the stock price can be a little tricky, so I wouldn't read too much into the 13% drop in a day. But yeah, it seems like as the market is growing overall, these two companies are not, and so somebody else is picking up that market share, right? So maybe it's the I'll call mid-market distributors that are smaller in nature that are expanding. Maybe it's the marketplaces that are seeing good growth. Maybe it's group purchase organizations taking a piece of the pie. So yeah, I mean, there's clearly growth overall in terms of dental service, but possibly those two companies are slipping. Now, I don't know Patterson behind the scenes too well. I knew a little bit more about Shine, and I know Shine is very, very, I'll call M&A friendly. So they love taking equity stake in startups and they love full acquisitions or partial acquisitions where they have some sort of board control. And so it's just interesting that we don't see. So if we zoom out, I pulled up the stock charts of Henry Schein stock and Patterson stock over the past 5-year period. And over the past 5 years, it looked like Henry Schein stock has gone up 11.17% as of today, recording September 16th, 2024. Patterson stock has gone up 23% in the past 5-year span. So 11% Shine, 23% Patterson. I want to compare that to just overall like market comp. Yeah, the S&P. So S&P 500 ETF has gone up 88% in that same 5-year period, and the QQQ, which is effectively technology in nature, technology oriented, has gone up 148% in that same time period. So when stacking up, your 11% growth in that equity investment in Shine, 23% in Patterson, Yeah. I'll let the audience sort of jump to their own conclusions, but
well, that's where I think when we're talking about we believe this industry is growing and who's going to benefit, and I think most of us always think about the bigger players benefiting the most, but I think really it's going to be these new companies or new technologies that are going to come in, and there's a space to be had. More people are going to need more care, which means they're going to need more supplies and tools. We already know the AI companies are popping off in dental, right? So we see that they're probably going to capture a pretty big amount of that growth space. Then you have other kind of just maybe RCM techs and plans. I think that's who's going to kind of benefit from this expansion. But Scott, while you're talking, a couple of the other names we just mentioned, like Dentsply and Envista, I did the same.
So I just looked up Dentsply as you're saying that. It's down 49% over the 5-year span.
Not doing Envista. And the reason I think it's interesting, so that means it actually hasn't grown in 5 years. It went down about 50%, 48, 49%, right? Was Dentsply. Yeah. Envista, I think, is down too. What was it?
Down 34%.
Over 5 years, right?
Yeah. When did, wait a sec, when did Envista go public though?
And while you look that up, I think, at the end of the day, it's not to rag on these companies because there's probably very real market driven things, especially we all went through COVID right in 2020. So it's not to say that there weren't macro forces and evolved that are changing how this industry's.
I feel like we're well past that now. The COVID excuses are over.
And that's why, to me, it's okay, well, then the manufacturers kind of give a micro lens into how maybe disruption's getting seen. Because I know Dentsply is an aggregator. I know Envista is an aggregator. I know they're both innovating on the forefront of the technologies that they create. They're actually on the forefront, yet we see their stocks not showing that same thing. So that tells me is that there's either just more competition or that there are other players involved, whether it's competition or other kind of auxiliary things involved that might negate the need for something like that, or that might do something differently, and people are thinking about how they're growing their practice differently. So all that to say is the people who are more of a microcosm as to maybe the trends, the Shines of Pattersons can absorb with more variability what's going on. So if their capital equipment side's down, which directly impacts the Dentsply's and Envistas, their supply side might be up to counteract it, or their technology sales might be up to counteract it. And so but what it does is at least exposes in general, there's something that is keeping them from growing at the same rate as the S&P 500.
It looked like the supplies, the consumables is the softest element of all that, all the breakdown. Just interesting to note. So,
and who knows? I think there's a world in which a lot of these companies will start shifting in the next year or two because the writing's on the wall at some level to become more technology focused. If that's the stuff that's winning and keeping them up, and that's what's going to grab this extra market share, there's probably going to be heavier investments in true technology and software driven products versus the consumables and equipment. I think there's just going to be a fundamental shift in these companies over the next couple of years. That's just my read on it based on the numbers. I think they will course correct. I will give all these companies the credit beyond what we're saying right now, that it does feel like they try and reinvent themselves. You know what I mean? Whether it's Shine going through their restructuring, which we've seen a lot of in the last couple of months, or, same thing with Patterson or whatever. It's it feels like they are attempting. They're not just sitting still. They're going to do something, and eventually they're going to.
Yeah. They gotta shake things up, maybe eat or be eaten.
Exactly.
We'll watch. Yeah, I was just looking to his credit. So Stan Bergman, CEO of Henry Schein, has been I think, in that position since 1989. No, he's been, chairman of the board and CEO since 89. And their stock goes back to, they went public in 1995. They went public around $4.50.
Yeah. So he's obviously done well for the company. So again, this is all just newer trends. Like the chart is up and to the right over the course of history.
Yeah. But over the past 5 years, I don't know. We'll keep an eye going forward.
Stanley has given it looks like a 1,500% return over that period. So
yeah, three decades of service to the company as the chief executive. That is impressive. Yeah, wild. Should bring him on.
Yeah. Who do we know that can help us? And look, to Patterson's credit, I did the same thing from the beginning of their company. They've returned, and they went public in 92.
Yeah.
They returned about 1,020% over the course of their lifetime. So they're returning money. It's just these last 5 years.
Yes, but this was like Sears growth catalog era. Like we actually just put our stuff in a magazine and send it to everybody. So we'll see. Yeah. We'll see if they can keep up through the next through this next revolution here. Yeah. But anyway, Janesh, I think this has been another amazing episode.
Yeah, I love talking about the news and just what's going on. Again, you help put articles in front of me that make me read about stuff.
I think you get the credit today. I think you had you had the majority today.
It was boring, like stock numbers and bills. Like you got me. That's where I come into.
All right. Well, I think that is a wrap for today. So take care, everyone. We will see you next week.
All right. Thanks.